California has a larger economy than India. New York controls the financial capital of the world. Together with Illinois, these three economic titans generate over $5 trillion in annual GDP. Yet, behind the glittering skylines and record-breaking tax revenues lies a terrifying mathematical reality. These states are functionally going broke. They are trapped in a multi-billion-dollar deficit doom loop, drowning in legacy debt, and watching their wealthiest citizens flee by the thousands. How did America's ultimate engines of wealth become financial ticking time bombs? The answer isn't a bad economy. It's a systemic trap. The illusion of the trillion-dollar GDP. To understand this trap, one must first dismantle a profound economic illusion. When observers look at California or New York, they see absolute economic dominance. Apple, Google, Wall Street, and an unstoppable flood of private enterprise. But a state's gross domestic product is not a reflection of its government's bank account. GDP measures the total value of goods and services produced within a region. It represents the wealth of the market, not the liquidity of the state treasury. This is the core of the wealth paradox. A state can boast an economy that rivals global superpowers while its actual governing apparatus starves for cash. Consider California, a land with a breathtaking $3.8 trillion economy. By all traditional metrics, it should be flush with capital. Yet, underneath the staggering macroeconomic output, the state's architects must manage a massive $11.8 billion general fund budget gap. The money generated by private industry does not automatically flow into public coffers. And when rigid baseline expenditures outpace actual cash intake, the illusion shatters. A similar structure decay is unfolding in New York. While Manhattan remains a nerve center of global finance, New York State is staring down a cumulative multi-year structural budget gap, climbing toward $34.3 billion. The ledger tells an anxious story. Year after year, public spending trends rise along predictable, locking trajectory, driven by legally mandated social programs and expanding bureaucracies. Revenue, however, does not follow a smooth line. It is highly volatile, sensitive to macro shifts, and fundamentally incapable of keeping pace with the compounding growth of state expenditures. When these two lines cross, the result is a systemic emergency masked by a trillion-dollar facade. The silent vampire, unfunded pension liabilities. While structural budget gaps represent the immediate, visible leaks in the boat, there's a far more dangerous entity draining the lifeblood of these states from below. It is a silent vampire, an invisible and legally unalterable mountain of structural debt that these governments owe to their own past. Unfunded pension liabilities. Decades ago, politicians discovered a powerful fiscal cheat code. To appease public sector unions without raising taxes today, they promised lucrative, guaranteed retirement packages to be paid out tomorrow. For a time, the system worked, but the bill has finally come due, and it is compounding at a terrifying rate. The ultimate case study of this crisis is Illinois. Today, Illinois is home to the most catastrophic pension crisis in the United States, burdened by an aggregate unfunded pension shortfall of $142 billion. To put that number into perspective, the state's pension-funded ratio has plummeted to a mere 45%. According to the Government Accountability Office, an 80% funded ratio is the bare minimum benchmark for financial health. Illinois is operating at nearly half that safety margin. This means that if every state employee retired today, the state could not pay out even half of what it legally owes. This debt is so massive that it now towers at 197.2% of the state's total own source annual revenues. Unlike a corporation, which can restructure its debts through bankruptcy court, these states are entirely trapped. State constitutions, particularly in Illinois, contain strict clauses that forbid the reduction of public pension benefits once granted. Every dollar diverted to pay for past retirements is a dollar that cannot fund schools or repair roads today. The past is actively consuming the present. The Jenga tower of progressive taxation. To pay for these compounding past promises, states like California have constructed a tax system that resembles a hyperfragile tower of Jenga blocks. On the surface, the strategy seems logical. If you need more money, you simply tax the wealthiest citizens at higher rates. This progressive taxation model has allowed California to pull in unprecedented sums of cash during economic booms, but has also transformed the state's budget into an unpredictable financial casino. The entire system is now dangerously top-heavy. California relies almost exclusively on its big three revenue streams: personal income tax, corporate tax, and sales tax. Within that system, the dependence on the ultra-wealthy is staggering. The top 1% of earners foot nearly 50% of the entire state's personal income tax revenue. This means the fiscal survival of a state of 39 million people rests entirely on the variable financial fortunes of a few thousand individuals. When those individuals have a spectacular year, when tech companies go public, stock markets surge, and capital gains materialize, the state treasury overflows with cash, leading to a false sense of security and a subsequent expansion of permanent government programs. But when the wind changes, the tower wobbles violently. A single bad quarter in Silicon Valley, a tech sector stock contraction, or a rise in federal interest rates that freezes initial public offerings instantly triggers an immediate multi-billion-dollar state budget emergency. The gold blocks at the very top of the Jenga tower are pulled out by market forces, and because the middle class does not generate enough taxable income to stabilize the structure, the entire fiscal apparatus threatens to collapse, leaving the state's financial health entirely at the mercy of stock market whims. The Great Domestic Migration Exodus. When a government builds a volatile casino budget and combines it with a crushing cost of living, it creates a powerful incentive for the house's most valuable players to simply walk out the door. This is the reality of the Great Domestic Migration Exodus. For years, policymakers assumed that the wealthy would quietly absorb high tax rates as the necessary price of admission for living in cultural hubs like Los Angeles or Manhattan. That assumption was a fatal miscalculation. Internal Revenue Service migration data, which tracks the movement of tax returns across state lines, reveals a quiet but massive bleeding of wealth. Billions of dollars in adjusted gross income are physically migrating out of New York County and Los Angeles County every single year. This is not just a loss of people. It is the systematic extraction of the tax base itself. The destination of this capital is no mystery. Wealth is flowing like a torrent into no-income tax havens like Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. When a high-earning family packing a multi-million-dollar annual income relocates from Los Angeles to Austin or from Manhattan to Miami, they execute a legal and highly profitable financial exit strategy. The state they leave behind loses a recurring stream of revenue that was supposed to fund public infrastructure and pensions for decades to come. As the upper middle class and wealthy depart, they leave a smaller, less affluent population behind to carry an ever-growing burden of legacy debt. The math becomes devastatingly simple. As the pool of taxpayers shrinks and the fixed costs of the state remain the same, the pressure on the remaining residents intensifies, accelerating the desire for even more people to flee. Corporate flight and the Band-Aid tax. The migration of individual taxpayers is accompanied by a far more institutional and calculated departure: the flight of corporate giants. For nearly a century, California and Illinois were the undisputed boardrooms of American industry. Today, those boardrooms are emptying out with corporate thriller-like precision. High-profile relocations have shifted from a trickle into a stampede. Chevron, Tesla, and Oracle have all systematically pulled their headquarters out of California, while financial powerhouses like Citadel have exited Chicago, packing up operations ahead for the business-friendly climates of the Sun Belt. When a Fortune 500 company relocates, the damage to the originating state extends far beyond the loss of corporate income taxes. A corporate headquarters is an anchor for an entire economic ecosystem, supporting thousands of high-paying jobs, filling commercial real estate towers, and driving local consumer spending. When that anchor is severed, the entire surrounding economy contracts. To combat this devastating loss of revenue, cash-strapped states do not cut spending. Instead, they implement desperate, short-term fiscal maneuvers that act as regulatory band-aids. California, for instance, has aggressively sought to expand its 7.25% software taxes, attempting to capture revenue from the digital cloud to offset the loss of physical operations. Furthermore, the state has taken the drastic step of permanently capping corporate tax credits for large enterprises. While this maneuver forces a temporary, artificial balance on the budget sheet for the current fiscal year, It creates a hostile environment for the businesses that remain. It signals to the market that the state will retroactively change the rules to extract cash whenever it finds itself in a pinch, guaranteeing that the next wave of corporate departures is only a matter of time. The invisible infrastructure collapse. When a state has maximized its taxes to the point of driving away both its citizens and its corporations, and when it is legally barred from touching its massive pension debts, it is left with only one final, dangerous mechanism for survival. It must cannibalize the physical world. This is the invisible infrastructure collapse, a process where governments disguise their deficits on paper by simply deferring routine maintenance on things that cannot immediately protest. Bridges, roads, subway lines, and water treatment facilities are left to decay, creating a silent, massive shadow debt that does not appear on any official budget sheet, but must eventually be paid by reality. The American Society of Civil Engineers regularly issues report cards for state infrastructure, and the grades for New York and Illinois are a stark, gritty reality check, riddled with near-failing marks for mass transit and structurally deficient bridges. New York City provides a grim blueprint of this unfolding crisis. The city's comptroller has projected an immediate $2.2 billion budget shortfall for fiscal year 2026, a number on track to scale to a staggering $10.4 billion by fiscal year 2027. This fiscal bleeding is driven heavily by unbudgeted baseline operational pressures, including emergency multi-billion-dollar bailouts for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's crumbling public transit network and massive strains on housing infrastructure. The choice facing these states is no longer about political ideology. It is a brutal mathematical ultimatum. You can either fund the promises made to the past, or you can maintain the physical foundations required for the future. By choosing the former, America's wealthiest states have allowed their physical reality to rot from the inside out. The glittering skylines mask a deteriorating underworld of rusted steel and fractured concrete. This is the ultimate end state of the wealth paradox. Empires of paper wealth slowing down, decaying, and quietly going broke in plain sight.